Hey friends, I had a really really great day today. In the afternoon, I was accompanying a student string recital, a violin studio and a cello studio. Some really wonderful playing, um, and some of the challenges that arise with learning really difficult repertoire on really difficult instruments when you're still a young student. Some of that is part of the game we play as we develop in our musicianship. And and my conversation afterwards with my parents and my wife, and we sort of had a family outing afterwards because my daughter also played on violin. Afterwards, we were just kind of chatting about a little bit about the recital, and then about we got kind of onto other things. Um, but what kept coming back for me is a sense that teachers and teaching have been so central to my life. I was thinking about, how do you learn music? What does it take to really learn a difficult instrument? You can become a lawyer starting in college. You can become a brain surgeon starting in college. Nobody starts to become a violinist in college. It's not impossible, but like the track is usually you start at a tiny early age, and you have really great teachers for years and years and years, and then you're facing some of the most talented people in the world who have spent the most time and devoted them as much of themselves to their instrument, and that's kind of the world you then swim in. It's a remarkable thing to take up music in any kind of serious way. And what shines through that for me are teachers, really great teachers. That's what I feel like I have experience with. I have had an embarrassment of riches as far as encountering remarkable teachers and having a chance to work with them for periods of time, and of course also doing my own work. It's not that you don't do your own work. That sometimes I think there's this mystique around the self-taught musician. It's one that I've pretty heartily and pretty thoroughly dispelled for myself, because the truth is, I know of like one musician, Jacob Collier, who, as far as I know, was pretty much self-taught. But the thing is, this is, again, it's like his mom's a violinist and is a professor at the Royal Academy of Music in London. And I know that he has had at least some lessons with faculty there, so one of whom at least I'm familiar with, because as a former teacher of mine. So I know, even for somebody who ostensibly is kind of self-taught and has reached a level of musical genius that, I mean, it's staggering. The guy's on another level. But even something like that, he's coming from a musical family. He's coming from a musical culture. He's he's swimming in musical water. And their styles of music where the autodidact approach is just a lot harder to pursue. It doesn't really. There's so much tradition there's so much inherited wisdom embedded in the music that it's really hard to get without having good teachers. And I think, maybe also something that's showing up for me as I think about this is that you have to be thirsty for it. You have to want that knowledge, because there's plenty of people who would say, ugh, you want somebody who's going to saddle me with the weight of the entire history of the last several hundred years of Western music, or Western and Eastern music. You're gonna I'm supposed to like carry that? No thanks, right? Plenty of people might feel that way. So you kind of have to want it. You have to see something, sense something in there that calls to you. But once it calls to you, those relationships and those deeply skilled, deeply experienced human beings, they become just gemstones. They become the most valuable people in the world, because they have themselves absorbed. You can imagine what it takes to absorb a couple hundred years worth of music history. Now, of course, nobody's absorbing all of it. I'm not trying to overstate my point here. I think what I'm trying to express, and what I'm maybe long-windedly trying to articulate, is an appreciation and a gratitude for what I've received from teachers, and so then with that understanding, with that background, now I see teachers working with students, and I have a different appreciation of how they are operating, what they're actually doing, what they're transmitting, what they're able to transmit. And because there is something about being part of that chain that I think really calls to some people. It really forms a I had someone recently, I was listening to John Vervaeke, and he was talking about, this is a guy, he has a series called Awakening from the Meaning Crisis. You should definitely check it out. It's amazing. He talks about the Gnostics, and then he also defines a Gnostic approach, or Gnostic approach, I don't know how you pronounce it, a Gnostic approach to anything, really. He talks about it in terms of philosophy. He says he'll read Spinoza, and for a while he's just understanding how he's understanding Spinoza's arguments. He's reading them, taking them in, digesting them, and thinking, okay, yeah, that makes sense. He's analyzing and internalizing Spinoza's argument. But then at some point in that process, he said that it's like a switch flips, and now he's seeing the world through the eyes of Spinoza. And he's interpreting the world. He's interpreting experience. He's interpreting other information, other thought, other ideas that come in through the lens of sort of being it's almost like an embodied sense of living inside Spinoza's mind and seeing Spinozistically, he calls it. And I was thinking about this in conjunction with music as I was listening to this podcast. I was thinking about music because I was like, that's an experience I have with composers. I have it regularly if I practice well, and if I start to get to a certain level of depth with a piece of music, I'll be like, oh, I see how Chopin is thinking about this. I see what he's thinking when he wrote this etude. And all of a sudden, I'll like understand fingering. It's like, I see what he's thinking. Because it goes from being notes on a page to being something that I can imitate and duplicate with my hands to being something that I understand in a kind of Gnostic way. It's like I've entered into the perspective that created this. And I have that regularly with music when I practice it to a very deep level, classical music. It's one of the most satisfying feelings you can have. It's one of the most beautiful things to like get inside a composer's mind, because it feels like I noticed it early on with Gershwin. I was like, oh, Gershwin is thinking about, like I was learning Rhapsody in Blue, and I was like, this is if I was coming from a classical approach, I would finger this completely differently. But as I started to play it and hear it and then just get it to where I was kind of moving through, I was like, oh, this is what he's doing. These are the positions. He's thinking like a jazz pianist in a lot of ways. And so I've had this, and I could probably talk about a number of examples of this, but the point is, there is this thing that happens when you go to a kind of Gnostic level of enmeshment in music and kind of enmeshment with a particular composer. And teachers who have gone there are really valuable. They're really valuable because they can bring that and they can transmit that. We can receive that, and then we can get there faster. We can get to that place where we're really inside of it faster. It doesn't have to take us as many years. We can kind of, it opens a door that we can walk through. And I think, as I think about my own teaching, as I think about the teachers I'm encountering now and the teachers who are teaching my daughter, it's all relevant because I teach, and because I have a daughter who's learning, and she's learning from teachers, and so I'm kind of looking at all that. But more than anything, I think I just am experiencing a profound appreciation from the experience of working with young people and making music like this. It's giving me a real reminder of how much I've been given by my teachers. And it's just a wonderful thing to receive. And I hope that I pass that along in my own teaching. That's what I would hope to give, right? Thanks for listening, folks. Appreciate you. If you've had any great teachers in your life, send me a comment. Let me know. Take care. See you soon.